All right, now I'm going to transition us over into our next speaker. We're going to have Susie Leo, who is with ADHS, and she's going to present on Words Matter, the Language of Health. So she is a parent and child health dietitian on the Emerging Nutrition Initiatives team and ADHS Bureau of Nutrition and Physical Activity. She has worked in public health for 20 years across many programs. Some of Susie's work includes managing Power Me, A27 folic acid program, which provides free multivitamins with folic acid to people in Arizona who can get pregnant to prevent neural tube defects. She also manages the ADHS Infant at Work program, which has been in place for 20 years. This benefit has allowed ADHS employees to bring their infant up to work for up to 6 months. So what a great structural intervention that is. So Susie, I'm looking for you. I'm going to turn it. Oh, I see you now. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction. I'm going to share my screen. And can I get a thumbs up from somebody that you can see my slides okay? Okay, perfect. So I'm going to turn my camera off for the presentation just to give my Wi-Fi the best chance possible. And then I will turn it back on if we have time for the Q&A. So as you heard, I am the parent and child health dietitian at ADHS, and one of my programs is the Power Me A to Z folic acid program. And today I'm going to talk about why our words matter and how I've implemented some of the principles that I'm going to talk about today into the Power Me A to Z program. Okay, so an overview of the presentation, the background on why our words matter. I'm going to talk about the language of health style guide and other principles to apply to our writing. I'm going to give a few examples that I've incorporated into Power Me A to Z, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of practice at adapting some messages. So why does our choice of words matter? There are principles and standards that we choose to have to follow when writing health messages and creating health materials. And so one example is 508 compliance. And that was from, back in 1998, Congress amended the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 to require federal agencies to make electronic content and IT accessible to people with disabilities. So I know at ADHS, we need to follow these guidelines for things that are going to be published online. There's also class standards, the culturally and linguistically appropriate services. That's another, annual training we need to take and keep those standards in mind. And then a style or writing guidelines per your employer. I know we're working on one at ADHS to implement. There's also, AP standards and, plain language, all these things. So lots to consider. So while there's guidelines we have to or choose to follow, we can do better than that. So with an increased and a necessary focus on equity, including health equity and inclusion in recent years, it's even more important to use language that addresses all people inclusively, accurately, and respectfully. If what we communicate can help our audience overcome economic, social, and other barriers to their best health, then we've done our job. And these principles that I'm going to talk about and that you may find yourself, adopting in your own style, they should adapt and change as our language changes and as cultural norms change. As we know, things look very different now than they did even 3 years ago. So things can just continue to evolve in this area. So health equity guiding principles. Using a health equity lens when considering and talking about health disparities. Not everybody can follow public health recommendations that we give due to inequitable resource allocation or infrastructure. Using person-first language and avoiding blaming. Probably many of us have heard person first lately, but it just means something like, instead of saying somebody is diabetic, saying someone living with diabetes, putting the person first in that phrase. Or instead of, autistic, a person with autism. Blaming language would place blame on people, communities, or populations for issues or health problems. So avoiding saying something like, X population has higher blood pressure compared to Y population. But you could say because of societal and historical inequities, many X people have disproportionately high blood pressure. So not calling out, this group compared to that group, but acknowledging why this might be the case in your sentence. Avoiding implying that a person or a community is responsible for increased health risks. Using preferred terms for populations, knowing there isn't always agreement on these terms. So one that we've heard in recent years is Latinx, and the research shows only 23% of US adults who identify as Hispanic or Latino have heard this term, and only 3% use it to identify. Some say that it ignores the Spanish language and its gendered form. So again, if you want to use that term or a similar term to apply to a population, make sure you're using the most current or most accepted form of that. Looking for ways to develop inclusive health communication strategies and materials. So getting input from your intended audience, if possible, and then exploring and using other resources on health equity communications. So as I mentioned at the beginning, this is the language of health, an editorial style guide to effectively communicate to the public. So this was commissioned back in 2019 by ADHS's AZ Health Zone to provide a framework for guiding us in how we communicate important health messages effectively, but in a way that hopefully eliminates unintended harm and stigma. And I believe someone's going to drop the link to this in the chat so that you guys can click on it for yourselves. And it currently is undergoing its first major update since its creation, and it will include topics like health equity, gender identity, chronic disease, mental health, abilities, race and ethnicity, just to name a few topics that we're adding. So this is the preface to the language of health. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It is in the guide if you do click on the link that was provided. But basically, what we say and how we say it matters. Our words help to shape beliefs, attitudes, and behaviors, but it's not just behaviors. We can acknowledge that. It's not just behavior change we're hoping for. It's about mental wellness, self-efficacy, self-advocacy, feeling that our audience can make changes, that they're achievable, just to name a few of the reasons why we want to follow these type of guidelines. So in the language of health, it talks about some messaging strategies. So an effective way would be considering there's multiple dimensions of health, avoiding framing health as just physical health or one other dimension of health only. Health is weight neutral, not using weight as the end goal of health. Knowing and recognizing there's social determinants of health, not focusing too much on just one determinant. We know many, many things go into our health. And then focusing broadly on how groups of people are affected and avoiding implying or assuming everyone has equal or easy access to healthcare, because we know that's not true. Health-related messages should be audience-focused, practical, and positive. So audience focused, trying to meet people where they are. We hear that term all the time, but it just, and then enhancing cultural appropriateness. One message won't work for everyone. We know that there's so many nuances among our target populations or our priority populations. Remember your audience, their culture, their beliefs, their community, and their environment. Try to get community and audience input before or during the process. Make sure that guidance and recommendations are realistic and can fit into your audience's lifestyle. Small steps are achievable, whereas if you ask for huge changes from what they're already doing, that's not likely to be successful. Being practical, providing actionable behaviors, include only need to know information, and make your messages clear. Be sure to consider health literacy as well as literacy. These are different, and I'll touch on this in a minute. Using plain language, shorter sentences, white space in your designs of brochures or websites or pamphlets, things like that. Avoiding jargon or industry terms. Provide easy how-to steps to try. Touch on a few key points instead of overwhelming the audience with too much information. And put your important information first. So if that's all your audience reads, they got your most important message. And then lastly, messages should be positive. Use respectful, considerate messages. Provide messages of optimism and hope. And Phrase your messages that you want to collaborate with your audience. Don't dictate at them or towards them. People deal with trauma and stress in different ways, and their coping mechanisms may not be what we consider to be conventional. So use respectful messages that come from a place of understanding instead of judgment or bias. If possible, ask your priority audience by what terms they prefer to be referred. Use descriptive information only if necessary. Include it if it's pertinent to your health message, but avoid drawing undue attention to characteristics like race, ethnic identity, disability, etc. In order to help people heal from past traumas and life experiences, use messages that are optimistic and positive. Be aware of power dynamics when choosing your words. Try to convey a sense of collaboration by using words that foster a sense of working together and give a sense of empowerment by using words like think about, try, consider, instead of do this. So just a quick question, and I know it's probably not ideal to put something in the chat, but I just wonder, and I hope that people realize there's a difference between literacy and health literacy. Health literacy has been, I've been aware of it for about 10 years now, but before that, I did not know there was something called health literacy, and now it's something I think about every day in my job. So literacy, as we all probably know, the ability to read and write. Personal health literacy is the degree to which individuals have the ability to find, understand, and use information and services to inform health-related decisions and actions for themselves and others. And then new, I believe last year, is the term organizational health literacy, the degree to which organizations equitably enable individuals to find, understand, and use information and services to inform health-related decisions and actions for themselves and others. So a little bit on health literacy. This must be considered when crafting your health messages. Even if someone reads well, they may not understand medical terms, procedures, how their bodies work, medicine instructions. Even if someone is comfortable using and understanding numbers, they may not understand statistics to evaluate the risks and benefits that it may affect their own health. And then health conditions may require complicated self-care. We all know that. So when using medical and health jargon, and we expect our audience to decipher our health messages, we create a health literacy problem. So using plain language is a must. And this is definitely not a skill you acquire all at one time. I mean, I'm still learning how to incorporate plain language even better in my materials. So the basics of plain language, simple things you can do, even if you have no training in health literacy, that can improve your materials. So keep paragraphs short, group or chunk information, and grouping just breaks information into logical groups. Choosing your font style, don't use reverse type, and that means a light type on a darker background. That's not as easy to read. Limiting italics, limiting all caps, using multiple fonts. Try to use a sans serif font, and I made the word serif a little bit different because that shows the serifs on that typeface, and those are those little extra flourishes on that word serif, like in the F and the all of them have it. Use a plainer font. Keep words short when possible. If you need to put a technical term, use it and put it in parentheses. And then you can use the simpler term from then on. Use an active voice and be consistent with that. Just a refresher on active voice. It has the subject performing the action on the target. So saying, I brought balloons to the party, instead of saying balloons were brought to the story. So active voice is just more direct and engages your audience a little better. And then using a conversational style to write, and just writing how we speak. That will help our audience understand even better. So another thing to consider, and again, these are all different skills and just things to, slowly work into your toolbox. You're not going to learn all of these things from my presentation, or even, doing your own little bit of research. These are things to just slowly learn and improve on over time. So avoiding words and phrases that come from a deficit lens. So what's missing or wrong? One example, just a quickie, is saying English language learner instead of limited English speakers. That's pointing out that they are limited in a skill, whereas English language learner is obviously denoting that they are learning the language, and that's not their first language. Focus on strength and potential. Create a positive perspective and motivation instead of a shaming feeling. So most adults don't want to be told what to avoid. They want to be told what they can eat and what they can do instead of the opposite. And so focusing on the positive, this will give you energy. This will taste great. This gives you more time with your family. This can nourish your mind and your body. You can get more calcium for bone health. Honor your health and your taste buds instead of the negatives of, not getting enough calcium will lead to osteoporosis, or, using this type of oil will lead to heart disease, but spinning that to the positive. Focus on intrinsic reasons to want to perform the healthier option when referring to health behaviors. So allow people to choose foods and movement that are good for their body and that bring enjoyment. With our messaging, we can acknowledge the many reasons people choose certain foods and movement or no movement at all. That's their choice, while still promoting healthy behaviors to support health. So instead of mentioning the calories or, mention what can be gained by eating that food or doing that particular activity. And then stigmatizing or negative language is unlikely to lead to positive behavior and lifestyle changes. So looking at this graphic from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, I'm just going to point out two things. The top one, 82% of people said they didn't want to give up foods they like in order to eat healthier. So this confirms the idea that messages should be framed on what can be gained versus what would be lost. Putting certain foods in an avoid category not only is overly simplifying, but also can cause some people to just not want to make any changes at all. They can't do it, I'm not going to try. And then further down in the light green, 60% juggle both work and family, prefer to prep meals in 15 minutes. And again, this just shows the time constraints that many people experience. This reminds us that there are a lot of complex factors at play in making health choices, and one of those is convenience. So thinking about how our messages can promote a healthy relationship with food and movement, leaving space for food and activity preferences, food and activity of all kinds, honoring the many reasons people choose the foods and activities or no activities that they do that may not have directly to do with health. There's a lot of other things going into this. So here's a quote, trauma is not what happens to you, it's what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about trauma-informed principles from SAMHSA, and these are just 4 of the 6 that SAMHSA has. Again, to think about in your writing, safety, physical and psychological safety. Are your words going to be triggering to somebody? Thinking about collaboration and mutuality, partnering and leveling of power differences. Do your words convey a power dynamic? And thinking about empowerment, voice, and choice. This can lead to self-efficacy, self-advocacy. Using words, choose, consider, try. And then remembering his cultural, historical, and gender issues, moving past cultural stereotypes and biases, being responsive to traditional cultural connections, racial, ethnic, and cultural needs of our audiences. And then again, solicit participation and input from diverse members of the community and those who typically wouldn't be included in that type of feedback. And then I'll touch on the last point in a second. So PowerMe A to Z is the folic acid program that I manage at ADHS. We've been distributing multivitamins with folic acid since 2002. In 2013, it changed to a campaign called PowerMe A to Z. Before, it was just distributing multivitamins with folic acid through health departments, through WIC clinics, family planning clinics. But in 2013, PowerMe A to Z was created after thorough research into our priority audience, talking with public health workers and experts that interact with our audience, using proven strategies to disseminate health messages and our vitamins. So our audience is people in Arizona who can get pregnant, 18 to 45-ish, in order to prevent neural tube defects. And then our website has been geared towards women, has a female silhouette, logo, feminine leaning color palettes, a flowing hair silhouette on our materials, female versus male, sexually transmitted infection symptoms, referring to moms. And so these are just some of the ways that we've incorporated some changes. So across the bottom, you can see some of our imagery that some is still in use, some we are actively changing, and I will get into that a little bit. So on the PowerMe A to Z website, I completely redid the website in terms of, bringing the language up to date and being more inclusive. So instead of vaccination, using, some of this is plain language, saying shot, participate in, how about just do? Instead of exercise, no one wants to be told to exercise. How about being active, choosing joyful movement? Be suffering from, how about have? Contribute, we can use lead to, and then, trust your instincts. How about gut? Most people understand what that means. So you can't always avoid big words. When you must use a big word, as I mentioned, define it. And then also use a simpler term as well. So here's some of the ads that we have used in the past for Power Me A to Z. And you can see, obviously, women being featured, the silhouettes, the female profile. The original ad was 2013. Then in 2018, we had an update. And then in the next slide is, those are some changes that we made. So we updated and used diverse images with real people. The bottom right is our new video in English and Spanish, and it's just typography, not a cartoon, not real people, not women, just being more inclusive. We used a similar color palette to not stray too far from our campaign yet. But I'll get into that in a sec. And then we moved to Snapchat to better get priority to our access through priority audience. As most of you probably know, Facebook changed the way that they provide information to advertisers or collect it from us. And so that really limited our feedback from who was seeing and clicking on our ads. So we moved to Snapchat as well to better access our audience. So currently what we're doing for Power Me A to Z, we are focus group testing names, maybe instead of Power Me A to Z, color palettes to maybe be more inclusive than just pinks and purples, and then different logos to maybe not be the female silhouette. This is the first time that we are using a health equity partner list from ADHS to try and recruit diverse audiences for our focus groups. And so that's a first endeavor into that. And then if a new name and colors and logo are chosen, all of our materials and our website and our ads will be updated to reflect those. So when crafting messages, think about, what am I trying to achieve with my message? What messaging strategies are best and to be avoided, like I showed in the language of health style guide? And then what else do I need to think about for this audience and all those other considerations? It's a lot, I know. But again, just using some of these, adding them to your toolbox slowly and just improving over time is all that we can do. So hopefully that leads to an effective, accurate, respectful, and inclusive message. So here's a little bit. I'm sure we don't have a lot of time, but I'll just give maybe 1 minute. So on the left are some messages. I'm sure we've all heard things like them, and I'll give 1 minute, and just if you can come up with any like alternative or any ways to improve that, and then I will just show some maybe slight improvements that could be made. Okay, I'm going to move on. So again, we've all heard make the healthy choice the easy choice, but as we've said, and we know, not everybody has those easy choices available that are healthy due to lots of factors. So instead of saying that, maybe where you live can affect your health more than your family. We all know our neighborhoods, our air quality, our transportation, all of that affects our health. So just acknowledging that. Again, not calling out people with low income and what that could lead to. Everyone should be able to make choices that let them live a long, healthy life, no matter their income, education, or ethnicity. So again, just acknowledging lots goes into our health choices and our health outcomes. Balance your calories with physical activity to manage your weight. So not making weight the end goal, taking care of your body, mind, and spirit is important to staying well. So here's a couple of others. I'll just give a minute or so to just think about these. And I recognize all of these examples are food related, and that is coming from a dietitian. So the first one, calling out a certain food and talking about weight loss, we can do better than that. So saying something like, there's no such thing as a perfect diet. You can eat food that is good for you and for your body. Unsaturated fat can lower your risk of heart disease. We could be a little more specific. People won't understand what that means. Using oil when cooking can lower your risk of heart disease. So giving a specific tangible thing that they could try. It's easy to eat more fruit, maybe not for everybody. Pick up a banana next time you're at the store. Maybe some people shop at stores that don't have fresh fruit. They have canned fruit, or maybe nothing if they're shopping at like a convenience store. So if you don't have a grocery store nearby, here are some ways to get more fresh food that you can afford. So here are some of the references that, some of the sources that I've used, and some ways you could learn more about each of these areas. And then hopefully a few minutes for questions. We'll turn my camera back on.
Thank you so much. These are great examples. And I think this is probably an area that we can all build our skills in. So this has been really helpful. There are a few comments in the, oh, I see, like someone was trying to like, we didn't have the technology quite right for the activity, but Maria suggests eating fruits and vegetables can help you reach your goals. And another person mentioned that she's used your program in her clinic for years, loves it, and thanks you for the Spanish materials.
Great. Just to give a quick plug, my Power Man to Z program has been dark, not operating for like 9 months. So for anybody out there that uses it, knows it, we are back as of this past Monday, 3 days ago. So we are back.
Yeah, feel free to like share any resources and we'll share with the group. And then one person comments that health literacy is super challenging. And I would add, like, I really liked how you added on the organizational piece of it. So it's not just we're putting it on other people, but really taking some ownership in that ourselves.